Kansas City, Detroit. Fuck it. Bold prediction. It's conference championship week, which means it's a good time to look ahead, see what's going to happen this weekend, and where we stack up against the Final Four teams. Starting in the AFC. The Chiefs, who in the last 6 years have been in their 6th AFC championship game, they've won 2 Super Bowls, and have a quarterback that signed through the 2031 season. Oh, he's already won 2 MVPs. And on top of that, in what has been his worst season, was Eric Bieniemy really that important? He still has the Chiefs on the cusp of a 4th Super Bowl appearance, despite his receivers leading the league in drops at 44 per Pro Football Reference. His all-world tight end is having a down year, where he came 16 yards short of an 8th consecutive 1,000-yard season. No other tight end in history has had more than 2 in a row. The Chiefs' defense stepped up big, having the second best yards per game behind Cleveland at 289.8 yards per game, and points per game at 17.3, led by their all-pro defensive tackle Chris Jones. The problem? Baltimore. Baltimore is first in points per game at 16.5, has their quarterback on the verge of his 2nd MVP, and has a player Buffalo wishes it did in the kicking goat, Justin Tucker. Oh, and 2 other first-team All-Pros in Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton, as well as second-team All-Pro Justin Madubuike at defensive tackle, fellow inside linebacker Patrick Queen, and their fullback, Patrick Ricard. Baltimore drafts well and develops well, and then it does things like sign 2 different veterans for almost league minimum, and gets 18.5 sacks out of them, Kyle Van Noy at 9 and Jadeveon Clowney at 9.5, including the dance he got for a $750,000 sack. The Ravens are the biggest rival to the Steelers for a reason, and while we have won 7 of the last 10 and 3 in a row, we have some work to do. And now for the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers. How do we stack up? Well, I think week 1 showed pretty well when we lost 30-7, despite TJ Watt trying to win the game single-handedly, with his 3 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. Against the best defensive line in the league, that got better with the trade for Chase Young and signing Javon Hargrave, our offensive line gave up 5 sacks that day. They have an all-pro at running back, a fullback, tight end, left tackle, middle linebacker, second-team All-Pro, cornerback, and wide receiver, and reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Joey Bosa. The all-everything Deebo Samuel, and the only quarterback better than Kenny from his draft class. And the offensive play calling from Kyle Shanahan has made this team an offensive juggernaut, ranking at 3rd in points per game, 2nd in yards per game, balanced by the number 3 scoring defense, and both head coach and GM are signed long-term, with the quarterback on a 7th-round rookie deal for the next 2 years. And had the referees not screwed the pooch in the Cowboys game, this game would be hosted in Detroit, home of the Lions, with the 2nd best rushing defense in the league, led by Aiden Hutchinson, and 3rd best offense in the league by yards per game, and 5th by points per game. So all these teams are high-scoring offenses. Jared Goff is about to play in his 2nd NFC championship game, with a chance to lead a 2nd team to the Super Bowl, becoming only the 5th ever to do so, with his favorite target, All-Pro wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, and his All-Pro right tackle Penei Sewell holding down the fort against the likes of TJ, and second-team All-Pro Frank Ragnow at the center spot. There's All-Pros all over all 4 of these teams, and all of them have earned their spots in the Final Four. Now the next question is, where do we stack up against these 4? We beat Baltimore twice, 17-10 each time, and no, I don't care that Lamar didn't play in the 2nd game. We still beat them. And he is 2-4 against us in the 6 games he has played. And we held them to an average of 115.5 yards per game, which is 40 yards better than their league-leading 156, and 18 points better than their 4th place points per game at 28.4. Since week 1, our offensive line improved with the addition of Broderick Jones, and the secondary improved with the playmaking of Joey Porter Jr. Though in a rematch against San Francisco, I don't know which top target he would cover, whether it be Deebo or Brandon Ayuk. We didn't play either the Chiefs or the Lions this year, but when we met the Chiefs in the playoffs a couple years ago, it wasn't close. A lot has changed, but they have an ascended Mahomes, and we have an unknown offensive coordinator, and the question mark that is quarterback, Kenny Pickett. The Lions are a bigger mystery, as the last regular season game we played against them, Mason Rudolph tied 16-16. They were 0-8 going into that game. Since then, Detroit has won the NFC North at 12-5, and Pittsburgh has snuck into the wild card round twice, and lost both times, to Buffalo and Kansas City. So how do we stack up? According to statistics, on defense, we can keep teams from scoring as well or better. Baltimore, Kansas City, and San Francisco were 1, 2, 3 in points per game, while Pittsburgh was 6th, Detroit was 23rd. Offensively, San Francisco was 3rd in points per game, Baltimore was 4th, Detroit was 5th, and Kansas City was 15th, while we were 28th. Positions. Quarterback. We don't have the best of the batch, or even of their own draft class. How'd you do it, Kyle Shanahan? Lamar Jackson's about to win his 2nd MVP to tie Mahomes. Purdy was in the hunt until he ran into Baltimore with his 5 or 6 interceptions in Week 16. Detroit has Jared Goff, He's made some throws. I don't know if he's necessarily earned his number 1 overall, but he's definitely played better than a lot of people thought he would once he got to Detroit. Wide receivers. San Francisco has the advantage with Debo and Ayuk. Detroit has St. Brown. But I think we can compete right now with Kansas City and Baltimore because Kansas City has a bunch of question marks after they traded Tyreek and can't catch the ball. Again, led the league, 44 drops. And the number 1 receiver for the Baltimore Ravens is a rookie, Zay Flowers, who had 886 receiving yards. Tight ends. Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, Laporta. I love Pat Freiermuth, but he's not there yet. Running backs, Chris McCaffrey, first team All-Pro. Detroit has a two-headed monster in between Gibbs and Montgomery, and they can compete with us fairly well. Baltimore's constantly getting quality production from scrap heap reclamation projects like Dalvin Cook, as the starters are constantly on injured reserve. If you throw in the fullbacks, again, love Connor. He's not Ricard or Juszczyk, as both those guys are the All-Pros. Of course, there's not a lot of fullbacks in the league, but they are both deserving of their position at All-Pro. Offensive line. Of the 10 members of the All-Pro team, 4 are playing this weekend. And left tackle Trent Williams in San Francisco, right tackle Penny Sewell in Detroit, left guard Joe Thuney of Kansas City, and second team All-Pro Frank Ragnow at center in Detroit. Individually, they beat us, but as a whole, according to Dale Lawley, contributing editor of the Steelers website, the Steelers allowed just 36 sacks in 2023. The 9th fewest total in the league. Per FTN's fantasy DVOA stats, the offensive line's adjusted sack percentage, which accounts for opponents, the Steelers were the 10th best pass-blocking offensive line in the league. The line also ranked 10th in DVOA adjusted rushing yards produced as well. When you're top 10 in both of these metrics, you are by definition a top 10 unit. So while we may not have the individual accolades of the 3 that are represented, Baltimore is solid when they're healthy, but for some reason, they are constantly hurt between the offensive line and running backs. We have the collective to compete. Defensive front and descending impact. We have Cam, Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton, and some decent depth pieces. Baltimore has Madubuike in his contract year. San Francisco has Javon Hargrave. The Lions have Aiden Hutchinson, and not a lot outside of that. Kansas City has Jones and Karlaftis, and not much after that. So overall, if Cam is healthy, I think we can compete. He's been All-Pro 3 or 4 times, even at age 35. I think he stacks up well against all of them when he's healthy. Edge rusher, we have TJ Watt. Here's where we have a decent argument. TJ Watt, who should be winning his 2nd Defensive Player of the Year, and Alex Highsmith combined for the tandem multiple sports analysts have deemed the best pair of edge rushers in the league. According to one ESPN writer, he did a ranking of the most valuable players in the league. TJ was 13th, which I don't agree with, but sure, fine. By the way, on that, Dak Prescott was the most valuable player in the league. So take that with a grain of salt. The same article rated Alex Highsmith as the 73rd most valuable player in the league, which is not great on a top 100, but is pretty good in the NFL as a whole. Baltimore has the scrap heap reclamation projects of Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney, who, again, combined for 18.5 sacks on league minimum contracts. Detroit, like I said, has Aiden Hutchinson, who's earned his 2nd overall pick from last year, but was the only person to have more than 5 sacks on Detroit's defensive line, and the only player to have more than 7 tackles for a loss. San Francisco has reigning Defensive Player of the Year Nick Bosa, and Javon Hargrave was 2nd on the team to his 10.5 sacks with 7. So they have a lot of really good pieces, but as far as edge, I'll take R2 over anyone else's. Linebackers. Nope. Fred Warner, Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith. 3 of the top 6 All-Pros are represented here, and we have nothing that's a favorable comparison. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The guys we signed were very good players. Elandon Roberts played his butt off, but he was the only one there, and injuries to Minka, injuries to Cam, injuries to Cole and Quan. Like, we were decimated in the middle of the field last year. Secondary. Speaking of Minka, he is an All-Pro. But not this year. He is a Pro Bowler this year because that means something, but doesn't mean as much as an All-Pro. Joey Porter Jr. is everything we could have asked him to be. But with Baltimore laying claim to the best safety in Kyle Hamilton, and San Francisco having 2nd-team All-Pro Travarius Ward at cornerback, we can compete with Detroit. Hey, how you doing, Cam Sutton? And Kansas City, though they have the youth and experience there to outpace us currently. And for the 3rd team, special teams. We have Chris Boswell, 2nd best kicker in the league, in my opinion. Unfortunately, the best kicker in the league, potentially of all time, plays in the same conference and the same division in Justin Tucker. When it comes to punters, I'm not putting our guy up against anybody. We do have 1st-team All-Pro special teamer Miles Killebrew with his multiple blocked punts this year. And Detroit has 2nd-team All-Pro Jalen Reeves-Maben as their special teamer. So again, I'm not taking our punter against anyone. I'll take our long snapper because even though he's not on the All-Pro team, he's been very solid for us for the handful of years he's been with us. We've got Miles Killebrew, we've got Connor Hayward, we've got a handful of other special teamers that are, I think, can compete. I love Danny Smith as a coach. Boswell, Tucker. So in conclusion, how do we stack up? Defensively, we have the numbers. Points per game, we're in 6th overall. Yards per game, we're not great. Overall, our defense can stand up when we're healthy. We were not healthy between Roberts, Alexander, Holcomb, Minka. We were just hit by the injury bug hard this year. As Dave Lawley said, our offensive line is top 10 in the league. How much better can it get? Well, if we get someone to replace Jones at right tackle, move him over to the left on his more natural side, whether it be through draft or free agency, then, we'll have, I think, a better offensive line, and then we'll see where we go from there. We're not there yet, but I think one more offseason, get a good offensive coordinator, which the rumor mill / the reported discussions has made me realize that, there's a lot more people on offensive coordinator opportunities than I could even think of. So far, the Steelers have been rumored to talk to Cliff Kingsbury and Zach Robinson, the passing coordinator from the Rams. I don't understand all the different passing and rushing coordinators and all of that stuff, but he's got Oklahoma State connections, so maybe that's a sign they're looking to re-sign Mason and say, hey, what do you think? Overall, I think it's going to be a couple of good games this weekend. I think it's going to be Kansas City and Detroit. Somehow Detroit's going to pull it out. Kansas City, Detroit. Fuck it. Bold prediction. If you made it this far, why? But thanks. And I will be back next week to preview the Super Bowl / what the Steelers are doing as far as their offseason. So, see you next week. Thanks for watching.